Yeah. So I just want to know everything about the trip, the whole experience.
Oh, sure. Well, I'll give you like the like I said, kind of the high level. I mean, as you know, with these conferences, there's a lot of there are a lot of talks on what do you call it? Like heavy, heavy tech side on that. So I'm gonna skip over a lot of that stuff. I'm still learning a lot of that myself. So I'm gonna stick more towards like basically the forecast of kind of what these big companies are seeing.
Yeah. So basically, like the format, like were there a lot of places where you just sat down, or were you mostly walking?
Okay, so so basically it was at the convention center is the Santa Clara Convention Center. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a big convention center, but the conference is small. Like, I mean, there's like 200 people there, maybe 200
Okay.
people, right? And I mean, you could shake everyone's hand. Like, it was what I mean by that is like it was so easy to meet pretty much everyone.
And
And
we're talking CEOs.
everyone in the industry. I mean, anyone from a CEO to, I mean, of course they have like their sales reps and stuff there, but anyone from like CEOs to, CTOs and engineering team and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just really, really intimate. Rather than like I've been to like much larger conferences and where it's thousands of people, right? And you're meeting like people who don't even really work at the company. So
Cool.
it's pretty good. Yeah.
So hey, Dave. I know you're on mute there. So this is Ryan. Ryan's a member of the Southern California Quantum Computing discussion.
Hey,
And,
how you doing?
Yeah, so Dave is a vet with these meetups and Zooms and the whole thing.
Oh, cool.
I've been on one of Dave's before. So Dave and I met at a Tech Coffee event. So
Okay.
he's, he does lots of the Mind Master kind of stuff too. So I'm sure he'll have a critique of us towards the end, right, Dave?
Well, maybe not.
So Dave, are you what's your background?
Well, let me see. I've got quite a diverse background. I have an engineering degree in systems engineering.
Okay.
I was in the Navy for quite a while.
But for a long time though, like almost 20 years, right, Dave?
Well, yeah, I did 10 years active, and then I stayed in the reserves for 18 years after I got off active duty.
To 28. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so let me close the door here. I got off active duty. I started out my own photography business. I did portraits and weddings for about 6 years. Then I worked with my wife in her financial business as sort of a operations manager / marketer / double checker on the spreadsheets.
Okay.
And I went and got a job working as a government contractor doing training for the Navy. I did that for 18 years. And then I started up my own business consulting company 5 years ago. So I work with small businesses, like micro businesses, sole proprietors and home businesses, people with no employees. My largest client currently has 3 employees.
Okay.
So that really, really small mom and pop kind of business.
Cool.
Okay.
And then
Ryan,
Ryan,
I am now.
Oh, sorry. I just one other question, Dave. So what are you primarily consulting? Is it
Profitability,
oh, gotcha.
work-life balance, business things that the small businesses, you don't really ever learn how to be a business owner. You learn how to, bake pies with your aunt, or you learn how to do books, or you learn how to be an HR person, but you don't really ever learn how to run a business.
Okay.
So I work with them on day-to-day operations, efficiency, effectiveness, marketing, and finding their ideal client base, and then executing on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent.
and he's totally coast to coast. I was on one of his things, and it was somebody from, the Midwest, and he kind of puts you on the spot, and he'll ask you like, what do you need to do this week? And I would totally do it. I'm trying to find some time, Dave, so maybe I can hop on one of yours.
Yeah, I mean, you're always welcome to come back. It has to be a fit. It has to be something that you need. I don't, I feel there are a lot of people out there that can really use my services, but some people don't necessarily need it, because of the place in their business where they are. And I mean, the idea is that whatever you going to pay me, I want to be giving you back at least 4 or 5 times that in real hard dollar value.
Yeah, and maybe we could talk later too, because I know it's like a group thing, and it, so but yeah, I always have an open mind. So Ryan, I don't know too much about your background. What led you into quantum?
Yeah, so basically, my background is education-wise theoretical physics, and then I did a ton of. I worked primarily in applied physics and engineering.
Okay.
So I did a lot with nano and microphotonics, nano microelectronics, laser engineering.
And we're talking bench work?
For the most part, I mean, like with laser engineering, I was out in the field a good bit, but yeah, pretty much all bench work, like in the labs.
Yeah. Because so Dave, so we were talking one time, and I remember, Ryan, you hopped in and you said, I actually have worked on something like that, and it was a 256 qubit of the Harvard lab after the IBM's 127 qubit announcement.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I think, weren't you saying you're trying to get more into the financial aspect of quantum?
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So my background, I ended up, after laser engineering, I ended up joining Honeywell Quantum Solutions. So I worked at Honeywell for a while.
Oh.
So I was a physicist at Honeywell, working on their quantum computer.
Oh, wow.
And then I left them in the middle of the pandemic and basically took a sabbatical. And then, now I'm building my own quantum computing company. So
you obviously know Continuum with Honeywell and Cambridge. Yeah. So Dave, there was a merger with Honeywell, as with many partnerships this year, and this Cambridge Quantum Computing. And I was actually on a YouTube video, and they kind of announced it there, but they didn't say the name.
All right.
So that's awesome, though. So you were working alongside quantum, it sounds like, at Honeywell.
No, I was like on the Honeywell. I was on the quantum team. Like I was building the quantum computer. Like I was, on the bench. Like we were, building the hardware of this thing.
Wow.
Working with the atomic physicists and like getting the code to run with it. And like,
wow.
we were.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
We were essentially building like, so you build the trap, which is like this huge vacuum chamber, and then you have a chip, which is like, it looks like a little silicon chip that you put in a computer, and that has like rails on it, and then you have, like, in this vacuum chamber, you have a cup that has like rubidium in it, and then you heat that up and it starts shooting out the rubidium atoms, and then it catches them in the trap, and then with like electromagnetic like I forgot what they're called, like rails, and then we use lasers, and you use the lasers to change the states of the atoms and to trap the atoms and to, do different things with them. So you like ionize it, you change the state, you do all this stuff. So you're kind of you have a classical computer that runs the algorithms. Then you have that translates over to lasers and electromagnetic fields that essentially manipulate the atoms. And then you get it to work like that. So
is this considered superconducting qubit?
No, this is trapped ion.
Trapped ion. Okay.
Yeah. So, my previous experience with the laser experience, I was doing a lot of cold atom trapped ion stuff in different labs at various universities. So
very cool. So how big is the whole thing? The trapped ion.
This thing's like the size. Like, well, like the trap itself is small. It's like, the size of maybe a little bit bigger than a quarter, right? Like you can fit like on that, right? It's really small. You're talking about atoms, right?
Right.
So it's really small, but the whole system itself, like all the kit and caboodle, so the kitchen sink is like, it's like the size of a bus.
Wow.
It's huge. It's a
really
big system.
Like D wave, you see D waves annealing a lot, and then I did see an ion Q. So ion Q is also ion trap. I saw one of theirs, but I always thought it was smaller than the other ones, like the superconducting.
Yeah, so like the trap itself is probably like the size of maybe like a, an oven, like an oven in your house, right?
Okay.
Like the chamber itself is much smaller than that, but like the space that it takes up is, say, like about the size of an oven, right?
Okay.
The thing is when you start using all the optics, you work in chemistry, I'm sure you saw optics tables a lot. You need a lot of space to run all the various paths for the beams. So those are the things that take up majority of the length of this thing when you're working with trapped ion.
Yeah, and we can transition into something else here. So what was the biggest challenge? Was it air correction? in the whole thing?
So with trapped ion, we have high fidelity, so our error rates are really good.
Okay.
The challenge with trapped ion versus superconducting is the number of qubits you can actually get, right? So like we're working with like, I don't know, like 10 qubits, where everyone else is working like 50 up, right? Like 50 plus qubits.
Yeah.
But their errors are much higher, and their fidelities are much lower, and so they have a lot more noise.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with like an actual atom, I mean, this atom's like literally like it's hovering above this this plate. That's like the main thing. The other issues that you run into are actual spontaneously, like a hydrogen might come off the wall of the trap and knock an atom out, right?
Okay.
And then you gotta load another one in, or like a cosmic ray might just come, just barreling through there and just interact with it in a weird way. So there are like most of our noises come from these atomic level.
Very cool.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I think that especially Dave too, there's another gentleman that might hop on too. There's a couple other people that said, we want to watch this. If you could start talking about, and you said you had a pitch deck here.
Yeah, I put together a presentation. You can stop me at any time. I can just go straight through it, and you can stop and talk about it, or I could just kind of give you the spiel, and then we can talk about it afterwards. I'm happy to do either way. Some of it's redundant, but like basically it's just kind of updates from like BCG, Google, D-Wave, Goldman Sachs kind of, and then like if you guys are interested in this, like for me, like because my aspect, like right now, like I really want to look in the financial realm of quantum computing and how it's going to impact finance. And so there, like I have information from like what the VCs are saying and what the analysts are saying and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not a ton, but I think quite useful.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's about it.
So do you see on your screen, because it's showing on mine that you should be able to?
You're talking about present?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can share my share screen.
Share screen, maybe.
Yeah. Can you guys see this?
Yeah. This is awesome here, Ryan.
Does it look big? Is it full screen?
Yeah, that's good. It still shows us, but it's good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Q2B, to be honest with you, I forgot what Q2B stands for, but basically it's like one of the biggest quantum computing conferences in the US. And Dave, I'm not sure if you heard me earlier, but when I say big, it means like 200 people. So a very small conference relative to every other industry. So we're still in the early phases here, but my name is Ryan Considine. I'm the CEO of IndieGap. IndieGap is a corporation I started, which will eventually be built out into quantum computing applications. And I'm currently looking for co-founders. You can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I can give you this information afterwards if you're interested. But all right. So BCG, Boston Consulting Group, they always give really good insights on what's going on in the industry. So let me shrink down this thing here. Sorry, hold on a second. Make that small. Okay. All right. Are we good? Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So basically here we have I think like the important takeaway here is that by 2040, BCG is thinking or is predicting the quantum computing world to be about $450 to $850 billion. It's a huge industry. Basically, all these industry cases are high level, and they expect machine learning to be the biggest impact, if not all, of basically impact into the industry. So the big players here that are looking to net 80 to 100 billion are pharma, logistics, and search and ads. And I think the search and ads ones is an interesting one to point out because that's not one I often hear when I hear about quantum is how will search and ads optimizations be built out, and I can see that being huge, especially using quantum algorithms. But industries to be impacted are the finance, and forgive me if a lot of this is redundant and you guys already know this, but just kind of roll with me here. Finance, pharma, aerospace, chemistry, energy, insurance, logistics, automotive, and government. And these will all be pretty much through problem types of simulation, optimization, machine learning, and cryptography. Yeah. So this one here is interesting. We have, so these are the development stages. Are you familiar with the term NISQ, N-I-S-Q?
I hear it. I don't know the background behind it though.
So it's an interesting one. I had to look it up myself, but basically, some big name in quantum computing said, I need to use a term, and I'm going to call the term NISQ. It means noisy intermediate scale quantum. That still doesn't mean anything to me, but I look into it a little bit further. Basically, what it means is intermediate scale quantum is that we currently have these like massive quantum computers, and they're really noisy. That's it. So basically, like to build a quantum computer, they're big and they're noisy. And so anytime anyone talks about NISQ, that's what they're talking about. So they're talking about this realm here where we still have these high error rates. We still have a lot of noise to take care of, and we need a lot of error corrections, right? So basically, in this slide here, we're focusing on NISQ, which is where we currently are. After NISQ, which is when we start getting our error corrections, handled or errors down, which is the holy grail right now. And then 2040 would be full scale, meaning that we have everything cleaned up. These things are running like supercomputers. Well, what I mean by that is like there's really not much error or faults in them, and the ship is full sail, right? So currently we're in NISQ. So we're expecting to stay in NISQ between 2023 to 2025. And they expect the revenue of this will be from the end user during research investment. So meaning that anyone pretty much using quantum computers right now, it's all research investment. So that they may or may not see very much of a return. But gradually, we expect the value creation will increase and take over. So basically, if you look, well, I can't do it here, but in the first column here, the bottom part, the column, the 1 to 2 billion, that is from the provider, and the 5 to 10 billion is say for the user. So provider being, I don't know, say IonQ, and the user being some, I don't know, pharma company or something like that. So currently we're expecting $1 to $2 billion generation, where the user will eventually get, $5 to $10 billion. After NISQ, so after NISQ will be like 2025 on, we're expecting to see roughly the 80 to 170 billion for the users and 15 to 30 billion. And I'm pretty sure this is for the whole market cap. So it's a pretty big market cap, not right now, but like it's a very quickly growing market cap. And as you can see at full scale quantum tolerance, then we will be getting up to anywhere from, roughly 170 billion for the providers to 850 billion for the user. So that's quite a ways away, but I think from what I heard at the conference is coming a lot faster than we think. Okay, this slide is interesting. I wanted to point out the first bit here. Basically, if you see here under costs in the far left, so I don't have a pointer, so.
Ooh.
Yeah. Is there a way? Do you know a way to get a pointer on these things?
Your mouse, or is that just
no,
me?
The mouse doesn't work. Let me see if I can get a pointer really quick. User remote control.
Yeah, I'm tracking like
okay
QPU cost versus HPC.
It's
ridiculous, huh?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So $3,000 to $5,000 right now to use a quantum computer, where HPC, which is high performance computing, so like D-Wave and whatnot, not D-Wave quantum computing, but like the supercomputers, 5 cents. I mean, there's really no comparison there. So again, we're still very much in the research phase. And then the last one on the far right, I think this one's worth pointing out. So there's 3 tiers here. One's conduct change, attract talents, comply with regulations. I want to emphasize attract talents, because this is the one that I heard over and over again. There's not a lot of talent in the industry. And that goes, I mean, like when these industries, like when I'm talking about talent, like when I worked at Honeywell, you have people who are, administration, mechanical engineers, systems engineers such as yourself, Dave, and on up to like, theorists, physics theorists. And so there's a lot of room for jobs to be filled in here. So you don't necessarily need to be an expert in quantum computing, but so I think the barrier to entry is not crazy difficult. But as far as the talent's concerned, this just, there isn't like a massive education system right now that can just like we have with computer scientists. You just hand over and just be like, okay, you're going to work for me now. The other thing is there's a massive talent drain. So like, big companies like Honeywell, Google, and IBM, and these companies are sucking up as many atomic physicists as they can, anyone who's worked in quantum computing, so that they can keep competition essentially from each other. So talent's a big one to watch in all of this. And then the middle part there, the classical and AI advances, you might be able to talk more on that, Kevin, but it looks like they're just, modeling some sort of polymer or something like that. And I guess they're kind of showing the difference between how a quantum computer would do it versus a classical computer based on a theoretical model.
Yeah, like it looks like they're trying to do some type of partial simulation. You see it says experimental results and computational. So these things are huge. And like in order to do any of these things like fully, you're talking millions of qubits. So you're going to see all types of approximations or truncating things. So yeah, these are proteins with alpha helix and beta sheets.
Yeah.
You'll see stuff today, that, they're doing these things. It's just they're lots and lots of partial simulation as opposed to like looking at whole, especially big molecules like biopolymers like that.
Yeah, and forgive me, these are taken photos from my camera from wherever I was sitting in the crowd. So
yeah, we could read most. It's just it's saying the molecular weight is high, and then they're trying to do things, only looking at specific parts of huge molecules. Yeah.
Okay. So moving on from that, so this is the last slide from the Boston Consulting Group, and this is just a timeline from where we are today, roughly, to 2026 on. So right around the corner. And if you look at these, the column on your left is in the millions, or the y-axis is in the millions. If you look at these, I mean, that's pretty good. Kevin, I think you said you were involved with pharmaceuticals or drug or something like that recently. But I mean, these fields are, they're growing, and they're growing very quick. I mean, right around the corner of 2023, they're expecting fairly decent growth in all these fields. So I think we're in the right spot for this. Is there any questions on this?
Not really, but it's okay. Financial services. Go ahead, Dave.
It's amazing that you see it starting really soon, like pretty close to now, as far as starting to really take off, where that horizontal line goes through 2021, and now it's like it's right at the beginning of where it starts exploding.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, so from 2016 to about 2018, I was working at I was working for an a laser engineering company, but I worked a lot in university labs and also national labs and private companies. And we were just seeing the start of this. So for this 2019 chart all the way to 2022 is like pretty accurate, where it's just slowly starting to gain traction. By the time I got to Honeywell, I mean, they hadn't even announced that they were even building a quantum computer when I got there. Google had announced it, IBM had announced it, and a couple other ones had announced it. But people were like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool. And then everything kind of started building momentum, but it felt like a lot of it fell off right when COVID hit. I mean, it almost just kind of went under the radar. But I mean, it's definitely not when I say right under the radar. I just it seemed like the market at that point just took off with retail, that it kind of dwarfed everything else for all of the last 2 years. But this industry, I mean, it's these guys, these companies, they have a ton of money, right? And a lot of the funding's from massive companies, like backing of, the world's biggest companies, through their own pockets. So, they're moving pretty quickly with this stuff. Okay, now I'm going to get into Google Quantum AI. From my understanding, obviously they're building a quantum computer, but it seems like they want to build, one of their big things is quantum machine learning, which I'll touch on in a second. So this is Google's hardware roadmap. This is where they see essentially the field to move in the next few years. I do want to point out, so basically this graph here shows time versus qubits, and at 10 to the 2 you get a logical qubit. At 10 to the 3 you get one logical qubit. I don't know where NISQ falls into this, and I'm not sure if it really matters on this timetable, but I just kind of wanted to read out some numbers. These numbers might not be fully accurate, so feel free to correct me. I know, and feel free to correct me, and or these are numbers I pulled off the internet, so I haven't gone and fact checked all of them. But basically, D-Wave right now on their D-Wave 1 quantum computer, which is, so they have a quantum annealing, and they're building a quantum gate, meaning a superconducting quantum computer. But as far as I understand, their D-Wave 1 has 128 qubits, and then they have D-Wave 2. Now, I don't know where D-Wave 2 is in the development, but they're apparently boasting that they're going to have 2,040 qubits, which is huge. So that would put us, easily into the logical qubit area. But basically, Q-Era, I think they might have the current record, which is 256 qubits. IBM has 127 qubits. Google is approximately 72 qubits. Honeywell, or now Quantinuum, is around 10 qubits. Rigetti's at 40 qubits. IonQ is at 30 qubits. So we are, if you look at this graph here, we're definitely beyond classical as far as like HPCs are concerned. We're definitely able to, reach beyond classical in our computation limits, but because of NISQ, it's causing us a lot of problems. So again, NISQ, this whole entire noisy aspect of quantum computing, is causing us this kind of slowdown. So I don't know, it's pretty impressive. So I just kind of wanted to lay those numbers out so you can kind of see where the field is right now. This graph here, I actually love this graph. It's called a hype cycle. They're pretty fun. So basically, it's just innovation to a plateau of productivity. And Google has put on incredibly interesting tech industries that's currently on the hype cycle. But basically, as far as quantum computing is concerned, practitioners will tell you that the field is progressing faster than expected by them. Scientific applications in the next few years are arguably now. Realistic roadmap for fault-tolerant quantum computer, and then high payoff. So basically, when I read this column on the left here, it's very optimistic, from Google's standpoint. Now, Google again is looking into this quantum machine learning, and if you look at the first these red lines here, this red line at the very bottom of this graph is quantum machine learning, and they're expecting it to be greater than 10 years. So that's way out there, and this is like right at the start of the hype cycle. And just because it's in the news, I also highlighted decentralized finance, which is essentially cryptocurrency, and then NFTs, which is non-fungible tokens, which are these GIFs that are JPEGs that are selling for millions of dollars. But anyways, guys, I'll send you this to you, but I highly recommend going through and just looking at all the different industries that are on this hype cycle. They are some of the strangest and most interesting areas of development right now. It's a pretty fun thing just to kind of run down. Okay, next up. So this is Google. They basically risk versus value impact. I think when you look at this, again, because we're in the NISQ era with the noise, pretty much any scientific application is low risk because we understand, like, you know, quantum gravity, for example. A quantum computer is a fantastic sensor, primarily because it okay, yeah, primarily because saying, like, even like with a trapped ion, it's easy to knock knock one of these atoms out of the trap. So you can use that as a sensor. And quantum gravity is, you know, kind of one of these things. But if you're a researcher and you're using quantum gravity, then it's not, you know, it's not that big a deal if it works or doesn't work. You know, you have the timeline to do it. But as you get into machine learning and classical optimization, where a classical computer is no longer able to really figure out whether or not you are correct in your calculations, now you're going into high risk and high value. So like if you're running like some sort of Monte Carlo algorithm for your for like in finance or something like that, you're probably not going to make a bet on it if you run on a quantum computer if you're not certain about you know, the error rates and stuff like that. So that's Google's. You guys have any question about Google?
So towards the end of that diagram, it shows the one before. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for instance, AI, everybody knows AI.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to make sense of this, because like the projections that I was going by is NSF said a useful quantum computer in 2023, which is like really soon. And then I think Honeywell said a powerful quantum computing in 2025. And then Google said a practical quantum computer in 2028, 2029.
Yeah.
So because I think for most, I don't know if these slides are like, because going out to 2040 for like full adoption, those types of things, me personally, I think we're going to see practical applications, some in 2022, and then a lot in 23.
So if you go back to here, right, right, the NISC and then the beyond NISC, this is like 2030 to 2025. So the where the pink focus for today is. And this area is the area that we're talking about right here. The 2040 aspect's the one on the right there, the full fault tolerant, where it's like, you know, everything, the ship is sailing, so it's running smoothly.
Is a good way of looking at this is basically there's certain applications you won't be able to do unless there's a lot less error. But for many applications,
exactly. Yeah, the error aspect of this is the big bottleneck for the most part in what's going on right now in this field. So you know, like when like you think about it, you're running an algorithm that is calculating something that a high performance computer can't calculate, and if it did, it would take, you know, maybe 10 years or something like that, right? So how do you know it's right? So you run it a lot of times and you put in error corrections and all this stuff, and then you still kind of ask yourself, like, okay, like how much time is this taking us and how correct are we, right? At what point can we really just trust the output of these things?
Right. I'd say for a lot of applications, maybe how correct do we need to be?
Yes.
It's kind of like an engineer's approach, because I've you know, you have a task and you do like hundreds of thousands of shots, and then your confidence level, like a Gaussian curve, becomes more defined.
Exactly. Yeah. And so with this, you know, you're like right now, if I wanted a random number generator from a quantum computer, I could do that. You know, you could, if you had the money, you can go to Quantinuum or any of these companies and say, hey, I want random numbers, generate it. It'll generate random numbers beautifully. There are small applications right now that run on it, but as you know, like, you know, we're still building the equivalent of quantum computing's basic, right? Like, so if you took basic and then, you know, C# and all these things up to Python, like we have Qiskit, which is essentially your Python overlay, but then you're like, if people still building like the foundations of these computers. So, you know, we're all kind of working together to become quote unquote quantum ready. So a lot of these when I get to the D-Wave thing, you'll see kind of where the industry is as far as how many people are actually into quantum computing or not. But there's a lot of companies out there that don't really know anything about quantum computing, and they can massively benefit by being what's called quantum ready, and especially on the security aspect of it. Like this, the cybersecurity. Once you hit like a certain point, the cybersecurity aspect of it. Where was that? This one here on the far right, where the cryptography, which is government corporate, that one's going to be huge. I mean, like, this is the next Enigma machine. The Enigma machine broke the Nazi code during World War II. Quantum computing is the next Enigma machine. So, like, I mean, you have countries now racing for it, where China's putting in 10 billion per year. The US is putting in $1 billion. Right. So the US, EU, UK, and maybe a couple other countries, maybe we got like 5 billion in the industry, where China and Russia, I mean, they're putting in a ton of money into these things. So like, there's a huge government push for quantum computing. I think that even in this current bill that they're trying to pass, it has something in there for quantum computing. So that's what I heard. So don't quote me on that, but if you find it, it'd be awesome to send it to me. But did that answer your question?
Oh yeah. Vlad, feel free to hop in. So Vlad's familiar with a lot of this too. And so he covered, this is Q2B, Google, and BCG, and then you're going on to.
Yeah. So my next one is D-Wave.
D-Wave. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So any other questions up to this point?
Not really questions, no.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so D-Wave. All right, yeah. And again, sorry for the grainy slides. This is taken on my camera, sitting in an audience. But you know, D-Wave, they get in this slide. I don't have a ton on D-Wave, mainly because they were just trying to boast their quantum computer, but I do think that they gave some interesting insight into the field itself. So in D-Wave, we have 81% of companies have use cases scenarios for quantum computing within the next 3 years. So kind of going back on your question, Kevin. So like that's expected of D-Wave is companies within the next 3 years to go ahead and start using, finding use cases for this. 33% of business leaders have eyes on quantum, which is huge for like even for consulting growth. Like, you know, 33% is not a huge number. I mean, it's a fairly large number, but like there's a lot of potential to, you know, if you're in the consulting area, to reach out to these companies and then say, you know, hey, I'm in quantum computing. Well, you know, what does your company do? Like, tell me about it. And which kind of leads on to this 31%. So like 31% abandonment for complex problems. I mean, you have 31% of companies are out there, or 31% of problems out there that are either too complex or too expensive to solve, where they can be solved on quantum computers. So, I mean, a great way to do this would be to contact companies in various industries and just ask them, you know, what kind of problems are you trying to solve? Where are they becoming too complex? Where are they becoming, you know, too expensive to run? And this is a great way to, you know, offer them to get into quantum computing. So there's a lot of potential for bridges there. So essentially, like, you know, 39% of companies are experimenting with quantum, which is fantastic. So there's a lot of room for growth out there. And on top of that, there's you know, a lot of research in there. So the expected benefits that D-Wave are seeing is speed, cost, and accuracy. And again, accuracy goes back to the whole entire NISC, this NISC component of it. That's all I put in for D-Wave, because primarily they talked about again, like kind of pushing their software and pushing their new quantum computer and their current annealing quantum computer. So yeah, any questions on this one?
I've been to their site, and
yeah,
what they're posting right now seems almost transformational, because they commercialized annealing in 2011. They've been around probably the longest out of all these companies as far as getting deep into it. They have, like, I think over 15 funding rounds. And what they post on their website are specific, they say for specific applications in this early phase, that it addresses all these business markets to potentially curtail having to go on AWS bracket. And even though they have a hybrid system, it sounds like mostly programming. What they're posting on their website right now seems like you could almost, if you have a specific business use case, just go on. And this 31% is, I think that's what they're targeting right now, is to try to get, these businesses that gave up on problems. And like you said, they're gate-based now. They're getting into other types of quantum technologies. And I think they're one of the key companies to keep an eye on.
I completely agree with you. Just like you said, the D-Wave is a proven company in high performance computing, supercomputing, and so forth. And like you said, they've been around since 2011 with their annealing, quantum annealing. So yeah, they're definitely impressive. I'm not sure if they're a public company yet.
So I know IonQ IPO'd, Rigetti, they made plans to. I don't think they are, but I think they've got the most funding rounds. As far as total funding, I think IonQ they had like $650 million all in one day, October 1st.
Yeah,
and Rigetti was a little bit further behind, but it comes down to experience, especially if you want people on your team with quantum. If they've been dealing with these quantum issues since 2011, and then here we are their company was formed in, I believe, 1999, and then they commercialized in 2011, and now at like 10 years after that, they have to have a leg up because they've been dealing with these issues for so long,
Yeah, absolutely. D-Wave is definitely going to be a key player in a lot of this. And I'll touch back on kind of what you were saying about these when I get into like the investing panels, about the companies going public. It's pretty interesting how they're doing that. But so everyone's excited about what Goldman Sachs has to say. I wasn't. I was expecting a lot more, but really, this was this. Are you familiar with William Zhang at all?
He comes up in the Google alert search for quantum computing.
Follow him.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, do it. Yeah,
Vlad too.
Yeah. William Zhang is an interesting guy in this. So he basically was giving a presentation on the financial aspects of Goldman Sachs, I guess, like quantum division. I don't know if he's the director of it. He's pretty high up there. He's a young guy too. Essentially he was talking about using like it was very math, for lack of a better word, math heavy. Like he was using Greek's calculations on his algorithms, and I'll show you what he was trying to show, but I'm still trying to understand it myself, so bear with me on this one. But I just wanted to show this slide here, which kind of shows the current horizon for, not horizon, but current quantum computing field, where this HPC horizon, this dividing line here, this is roughly where high performance computing is kind of coming to a stop, where, and as you can see here, the quantum processing units today are looking to kind of go beyond that, and then if you look up the top right corner here, so as we grow larger in qubits, breaking RSA, which is Shor's algorithm, and database searching, which is Grover's algorithm, as like the current holy grail of all of this. But basically, and then the two red ones here, this is just highlighting the quantum supremacy that Google did in 2019, and then the Hefei National Lab, which is the Chinese lab that did I think this is the one where they shot using photons or something like that in space. I'm not 100% familiar with that one, but they had got some sort of record there. And all this is meaning, where these two red dots are, is that this is beyond the high performance computing horizon, meaning that this is something that a high performance computer would take a lot longer to solve than a quantum computer, and by using a quantum computer, you significantly reduce the amount of time to run and process and solve the algorithm. And then this is
I've
where
got
it
a
got
quick question.
Yeah, sure.
On the on the scale on the axis there on the left, what are the units for program depth?
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure on what they meant by that. I'm not sure if it's like, you know, you get 10,000 qubits, then you get like, I don't know, 10 billion, you know, like ways to run something. I'm not really sure on what they meant by program depth. So I'm sorry about that. And like I said, this slide was, I wanted to put on here primarily to show kind of just the HPC horizon and where things are as far as qubits are concerned.
Yeah. So another thing, Dave, is it definitely goes up exponentially. So if you look at 10,000, that's like 10 billion if those dots cross. And then where we are, like, you know, say if it's like 100, it's about 100. So for every increase in qubits, like 55, there was a study like 55 to 56, and it was twice as fast, that operation for quantum. And that's not the case for classical. Classical, it's more linear.
All right.
Yeah. And then on this next slide here, which is the same slide, this is what they're showing. Like, so it looks like in 2020, Goldman Sachs did some sort of derivative pricing, which you know, use 50 megahertz. And then apparently what William was presenting was that by using this Greek's algorithm or equation that they were using, they were able to essentially get whatever it is they were calculating down to like 1 megahertz. So I'm not, it's better. I'm not 100% sure why. And I don't know why it's in this regime of, you know, over, you know, just under 10,000 qubits and with a program depth of roughly 100 million or 50 million. So I'm sorry, I don't have all of that information. Maybe it has to do with the megahertz. That's possible. No. Anyways, yeah. So sorry they don't have all the information on that. But really, with this, I just kind of wanted to highlight William Zhang because I think he's a person worth following in this field. Again, he's young. He's pretty high up, and he's a sharp dude. I also just want to kind of highlight the overall field.
So did he do this whole presentation here?
He did the whole entire presentation. I have more slides, which I can send you. If you want to dig through them, you can try to make heads or tails of it. I haven't gone through and just like really sat down and tooth combed it because they are like, you know, he lost me on this one. I mean, it was very technical. The talk was, so you might be able to pull more out of it. But this is one of those ones where I would need to go back and reread it and then possibly message him to try to really understand what he's talking about.
So was anybody else talking about any other experts like there, like John Martinez or
John Martinez was there. He talked about p-bits. Have you heard of p-bits?
Like, how do you spell?
P-bits.
No, I've never.
Yeah. I was gonna put that on there. Let me hold on a second. Let me deviate from this really quick. So
yeah, you don't have to. I was just curious as far as like the number of experts. There's another guy.
No, I wanted to show you this right here. If you want to take a screenshot of this non-equilibrium Monte Carlo of unfreezing variables, hard combinatorial optimization. John Martinez specifically pointed this paper out in his thing, and he said, "Read this. This is big. This is from, apparently some of the Google guys did it, but it's worth looking at. So if you guys are interested in it, definitely, you know, dig through it. Because I haven't had a chance to go dig through it, but in his talk, he pointed this out. He primarily talked about p-bits, which I was going to add in here, but I wasn't quite. Again, like with the p-bits aspect of it, I wasn't exactly sure what he's talking about, so that's why I left it out. And it wasn't about forecasting; it was just about the technology itself.
Because he had two big papers this year. One was on cosmic rays that you were just talking about. And in the articles that I downloaded, that came up too. And then the other one was about error correction. And there's been at least 5 like big error correction articles. So I would say people are working on it.
Yeah. Where did my thing go? Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, so yeah, that's what John Martinez is up to right now. He's an interesting guy. He'll talk over your head. I had dinner with him one time with a group of people after a speech or a presentation he gave at Boulder University and Colorado University, and the whole time, him and then this other guy who was a PhD. I mean, they were talking like, 10 feet above my head on some of these things. Like, that guy's a sharp guy. So
Vlad, if you don't know, this guy started quantum research in the 80s. He was the head on hardware for the Google Supremacy Project too.
Yeah, he also he was exactly. He was the guy behind Google's success so far. And then now he's since left Google. He's working on his own thing now.
So I think maybe in a previous slide, comparing the two between 2019 and 2021, in your opinion, why hasn't there been a huge number jump in qubits, say for superconducting quantum, in 2 years? Is it just error?
Are you referring to this Google slide here?
No, it was the ones you were just on. Like, you got far into it.
This one here?
Yeah. So it says 2019
okay.
and then 2021, and we haven't moved.
So this isn't referring to qubits. It's referring to basically successful algorithms run on the quantum computers themselves. So I don't exactly remember the exact problem that Google solved, but it was a pretty big announcement back then. But basically, it was roughly along the lines of this. Remember the IBM Google fight? That's what this was about. Yeah,
so are we in green now, would you say, the NISC?
Well, I mean, according to the qubits, we're still in between. Maybe like, right, if you look at this like darker blue CPUs today, right, that right underneath the red Hefty National Lab, you can see it goes out a little bit beyond 100 qubits. I think that's where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense, because all of the papers, like there's a paper on COVID, they'll do a CT scan and use a quantum algorithm. They're not exponential better. They might be, but on D-Wave's site, it seems to be the most like promising as far as like, because they combine these techniques in a certain way. But yeah, I still can't justify like why since 2019 it hasn't jumped significantly. Or
it's a good question. I mean, like, if you look at it, like, 1 qubit up to 10 qubits, there's a significant drop, and then 10 qubits up to 100, almost 100 qubits, there's a significant drop, and and then so on and so forth. So it's like this kind of this step function here.
Yeah, like it looks like for quantum to really kick in, like you at least have to get to like 1 million, because if you do the crossover like 100 to 100, but if you do like 1,000 to 1 million, and especially 10K to 1 billion, and there was actually a company, they said I think it was INQ, I can't remember who it was, but they said they're cutting off on hardware development to focus on machine learning, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, the application side of this is massive. I mean, you can equate it to essentially what what we saw with classical computing, from the advent of the computer all the way till now. The applications are definitely the dominant aspect of it. So,
and you said they just kept reiterating that machine learning is the main thing.
Well, no, not necessarily. That was Google, and Google is very much about AI and machine learning. So that was just kind of their thing. Goldman Sachs, you're right. Actually, I take that back. It's Goldman Sachs on the original slide I showed you, said that they think that machine learning will be the primary, or make the biggest impact on the whole entire industry as far as quantum machine learning. So let me back up to that one really quick.
And then the other thing that's going to come up is quantum algorithms, because that's like the secret sauce that everybody uses. Did that keep coming up too?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you mean? What did you mean by that?
Well, as far as like focusing on development, or like it's a big thing in IP, your algorithm. So did they keep talking about that?
They did. I mean, they did to an extent. I mean, this was more of like a business conference. I mean, there's definitely a ton of tech involved in this, or presentations and whatnot. I think these algorithms, the quantum algorithms, I think are kind of there, like the understanding of essentially how they theoretically how they should be used. It's just more like how do you actually practically use them with what we're given currently.
So in annealing, this optimization, there's no algorithms. It's just machine learning.
I don't know much about annealing. That one's actually fairly new to me. So yeah, I can't really speak to that one. But if you look here on BCG slide, it says machine learning applications to impact most, if not all, industries. So I would take their word for it.
Okay. Yeah, and Vlad and Dave, if you have any questions.
Yeah,
I got one. Great,
sure.
You didn't talk about AI for medical diagnosis at all?
Well, this wasn't an AI conference. It was a quantum computing conference. And I'm not sure really like how, I mean, I could speculate, but I'm not really sure how AI is currently going to play into quantum computing. Because like where the industry is right now is we're still it's an unproven science, it's unproven engineering, so we're still trying to prove it, right? So
okay.
Yeah, and it's very similar to AI in the sense that AI is still unproven. I mean, we we can have these these very simple AIs, but like AGI and a lot of these things are like artificial general intelligence. Hasn't, from my understanding, hasn't been really met yet. So it's all theory, and we're still trying to work towards how to actually get there. But on that note, a lot of companies are preparing for it, because when it does hit, just like computers, I mean, like the internet, what it did to retail, you could just imagine what these things are going to do to every industry, right? So yeah.
Can you just maybe give a quick, like 25 words or less on the difference between machine learning and AI?
No, I can try to.
I could call somebody for you, one of my advisors.
I mean, if it's too complicated, that's okay. But I was just trying to
not at all.
In my mind, the differences.
If we're at a bar and we're having a beer and you ask me, I'll give you that answer. Is that good enough for you? So basically, machine learning we can already do. All it is you have algorithms that could essentially build themselves. So an interesting one is you can imagine like a race car going, like a video game, but like you have a race car going around a very simple track. It's just a couple S curves and stuff like that, and it just goes around the track. And every time it goes around the track, it hits the walls. And every time it hits the walls, it generates a new car. And that new car has a memory of where that old wall was. And it just keeps going and going. And now you have thousands of these things generated from each other until one car can move around that track very quickly, just all nice and neat without hitting anything, and do it as fast as possible.
All right.
Did that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's essentially machine learning. We're there. Like that machine learning works really well. I don't know like the theoretical limit of machine learning, but that works, that type of thing works really well. AI, on the other hand, like you'll meet another guy at the bar and he's like, oh, hey, I work for an AI company. Okay, what kind of AI do you do? And he's like, oh, we build headphones that are AI. Like, what does that mean? It's like Alexa. Like, it's not exactly AI, right? Like it's kind of like a mimic of it, but or kind of a building towards it. And AI is essentially a system that can basically not only build itself, not only rearrange its hardware and update its software, it has the ability to learn. It has the ability to figure out very complex problems. So we have an AI-esque type thing that can play chess and beat the world's greatest chess masters.
Okay.
And make moves that where an expert in chess would say that was a poetic move, meaning that like that's not something a computer would just do based on where the pieces are. Like they're pretty intelligent. But then you have like AlphaGo, Google's AlphaGo, which is like a whole step up from that, because the game Go is incredibly complex and there's not a lot of rules around it. And so they're rules, but they're pretty straightforward. And Go is a very complex game. And the thing is, like, when you're talking about AI, like this thing could beat the world's greatest, grandmasters of Go. And the grandmaster, when he got beat, he said, sorry if I'm on a tangent here, but I thought it was pretty interesting. The grandmaster said, you can't intimidate it and it doesn't get fatigued, right? So that's in a sense, like, getting closer to AI. But true AI is, Elon Musk thinks it's terrifying. Other people are very optimistic about it, but I mean, true AI is, you can't tell that, like, if I could be that AI right now talking to you. That's essentially where, where the ultimate, like, holy grail of it is where you have it be able to interact, talk, build, and do all types of things.
All right, thanks. That helps a lot.
So then how can quantum make AI and ML better? Like, what are the shortcomings of both of those now?
So again, quantum machine learning, I mean, like traveling salesman problem, which is a really interesting one, or these like I guess stochastic graphs or whatever, where you kind of have like these like random dots and you're trying to figure out the best path. I don't know, like kind of those things. I would assume that machine learning could, go in there and kind of build these things out without really much human intervention. As far as AI goes in quantum computing, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. It would be if we got to AI. Oh, just to kind of cap off the AI for the last bit there. We currently have AI in the sense that, like, there are programs like Jarvis AI where I can write up a small, like, say I'm trying to write content for a website I'm making or writing a book. I can write like small snippets of how to mow your lawn. And I don't know anything about mowing lawns. And then this thing will go and use a huge database of the internet from like up to 2019. And then you write out these huge articles for you. And you could just basically, you could literally write a whole book with these things. And it generates, for the most part, fairly organized information and comprehensive information. So that, those are kind of pushing the limits of where a lot of the AI is. But again, like, true AI is one of these things where, if you have, say, quantum computing, hypothetical scenario here, true AI could go in, take quantum computing and say, okay, I want to, like, crack this security key to go figure out, what is on Kevin's computer for whatever reason it wants to go in there, right? And it could do it while we're asleep or something. I'm not really sure. So I don't. That's very sci-fi, but like I'm not 100% sure where current AI is going to fit into quantum computing. It's a great question, and I think it's worth looking into. So yeah. So.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sorry for the sci-fi rant.
No. This is really good. Vlad, did you have anything? That's fine if you don't. So how many more companies do you have here?
Just a couple. So I'm just getting into the panel discussions. It's just 2 slides. Are we good on time, or you guys, or we can?
Yeah, totally. I have stuff after this too.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I mean, I could cut it short and we can.
No. Keep going.
Okay. So panel discussions, there were 2 panels that were very interesting. One is the rise of corporate VC and the QC startups and the predictions for the race to practical quantum computing. So for the rise of corporate VC and QC startups, again, they're panel discussions, so there's no images or slides to look at. It's just people talking amongst themselves. This panel consisted of a venture capitalist from BDC Capital, Bosch Capital, and then Koch Investments. So the BDC is more venture capital, traditional in the sense of kind of, I guess like more like LP-ish type capital. And their investments, they were looking at big ones, 200 million. So they were kind of, it seemed, from what I understood, they were betting on one horse, where Bosch is doing 5 to 8 million, and they're betting on multiple horses. And it was an interesting conversation. Koch, on the other hand, they're pretty quiet the whole entire panel, but and they didn't really say how much they're investing. I think they're just kind of looking into the field. But BDC, their thing was that they're hesitant to jump into quantum computing funding because they believe quantum computing is a 10 to 20 year ROI, right? Which is a great point. If you're a smaller investor, you don't that's a really long time. So obviously you're probably looking for more like 3 to 5 years or less. Bosch, the VC from Bosch came back, and I thought it was brilliant. She said the short-term ROI is when these companies are acquired for talent. And again, this goes back to the talent acquisition, or the lack of talent in the industry. So, IonQ could easily get sucked up by one of these bigger companies, right? So if you're a small investor, it's worth looking at the exit possibly being the talent acquisition, rather than waiting for this thing to go full scale, full quantum computing. There are a lot of SPACs out there that I guess are looking into quantum computing. I know IonQ was de-SPACed, and I believe another one. I'm not sure which one it was, but again, just kind of reemphasize. There's the main takeaway on this was that I like Bosch's thing of the talent acquisition. I thought that was a really good. So if any of you guys are interested in building a quantum startup, there's hope for or funding it. There's hope for a quick ROI.
But you're saying they're investing today, correct?
Yeah. So like the LPs and like the family offices and these smaller groups are not so much apparently investing from what they were saying. They're not seeing a lot of these people investing. I think they just think it's too high risk, which is understandable. But with SPACs and with corporations, they can I guess afford to lose this amount of money in the investment. So
did you meet anybody there in the space?
What do you mean?
VCs there?
No, I didn't get the chance to talk to any of the VCs, unfortunately. I have their names, and they're on the if you go to the Q2B website, you can see their names there.
Yeah, because there's lots of investors. It's just warm intros are hard to come by.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Are you currently fundraising right now?
Yes.
Okay. How's that going? If you don't mind talking about it?
So we could talk about at the end, just because I have to cut these things because they can go.
Let me just blast the rest of these then. So the predictions for the race to practical quantum computing. This is a fairly good panel. Again, lack of talent is holding quantum computing back. Private money's up. Government investments are up. SPACs are SPACing. Again, the family offices and LPs, they're not really in the game yet from their understanding, but maybe you've had a different experience, Kevin. And then the burn rates, like IonQ and Rigetti's financials are public, so I would recommend going and looking at their burn rate. And then Quantinium, there's a speculation that they'll eventually go public. And again, Quantinium is now Honeywell plus Quantum Cambridge. Essentially, Honeywell acquired Quantum Cambridge. Don't let any news source fool you. Honeywell owns 54% of the company, so they own it. And then last but not least, I just kind of wanted to leave the best quotes. So one of the quotes was, can we trust an untested financial vehicle, meaning a SPAC, with an unproven science vehicle to win? I thought that was pretty good. And then the other quote was, the industry needs a unicorn killer because unicorns are passe. Yeah. And again, like these panels are a lot of people just talking heads, just kind of going back and forth. So, and then lastly, this is interesting. I'll just talk, less than a minute on this. This is open source identity Unitary Fund. If you haven't seen this, I would recommend writing it down and checking them out. So Unitary Fund is essentially they have a small fund. Kevin, you could actually apply to them, but they're doing I think $4,000, and there's no strings attached. You just apply, and then if they like what you're working on, they'll fund you. So if it's anything in quantum, you can apply. And it's run, the head of it is that guy, William Zhang. And I'm not friends with William Zhang or really know that guy, but he just happened to come up twice. But the important thing I want to emphasize here is that the Unitary Fund, these are the open source people. And if you remember from classical computing, the open source guys are the ones who are the big winners out of it. And so you don't see a lot of these open source in your garage type people in quantum computing yet, but this is a place where they're starting to pop up. And so it's worth keeping an eye on these open source communities. And if you're familiar with Discord, I highly recommend following and joining their Discord. Discord is the new forum space where people used to write on forums to talk about hacking and all this stuff. Discord is that new thing. So these are people who are playing with quantum computing for fun, and these are people who are probably going to come up with amazing applications for quantum computing. So I would definitely keep an eye on this group. And that's it.
This is awesome, Ryan.
Yeah, of course.
So the things that, obviously like the experts, the people that you ran into, do you know William Hurley?
I love William Hurley. Yeah.
Yeah. I was on a Johnson Johnson JLabs panel, and he was one of the hosts. And there was, I think, 4 panelists. Anyway, he just had a plethora of information. So I've been chatting with him back and forth, and everything's still early still, as far as like this being like a defined industry, and like, people like keeping to themselves, because a lot of what you shared is helpful for me, and a lot of this stuff I would have, you would find helpful too. And also to Vlad and Dave. But yeah, awesome presentation. I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing. I want to go to hashtag Q2B21.
Yeah.
Because it was 21 this year. So you guys hanging in there? Dave, Vlad, anything? So then we're going to switch over.
Cool.
And then we'll share this guy.
Kevin, what time's your do you typically get done?
Usually 8:30. So
okay.
I'll have you just hold on for a sec, and then I know it takes a lot out of when you're presenting, Ryan.
Yeah, I have a thing I need to run to in a minute, but
getting to that point. So I wanted to run over basically the significance of the location of the Q2B event. So again, my name is Kevin Kawchak, CEO of ChemicalQDevice. So it's December 16, 2021. And it's really important, the history of the Homebrew Computing Club. Do you know of this? Who knows of the Homebrew Computing Club? This is an interactive session here. No? Ryan?
Not heard of it.
Nope.
Vlad?
Very well down.
So the Homebrew Computing Club is basically Steve and Steve and a bunch of other players too. We're talking about Jobs and Wozniak. So this is the first personal computer is thought to, in part, come out of the discussions that were in the Homebrew Computer Club. So a new computing discussion does not happen every decade. We had personal computers, 40 years ago, and now we're dealing with quantum computers, which is looking more and more practical today. So it's a really important to understand the history of this. So it was a huge technological feat to do this. You see very kind of crude mock-ups here, and actually one of them is like encased in wood. And if you watch the movies Pirates of Silicon Valley, there's a number of books too that go through everything. And the certain key players, there's an individual from PepsiCo that comes on, and it's just got a lot of good, rich history. And if you have some time, especially over the holidays, I would recommend renting this on, your favorite, it might be on, here, Triumph of the Nerds, Pirates of Silicon Valley, and Jobs. So Jobs kind of moves a little bit away from like the technical innovation. So again, has anybody, you still never heard of Homebrew Computer Club?
Mm-mm.
So here's how close. So this is where Ryan was. Ryan was in Santa Clara, and then Palo Alto, and I think it's actually Menlo Park is here. So it's 15 miles away. So them choosing the conference in Santa Clara is no coincidence. And, this is just what how many times have you been up there, Ryan?
You mean, so I live in San Francisco. So,
I thought you were, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were actually down in San Diego.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I had that perception. So I know Dave and Vlad and I were down here. It's off the map here. But yeah, there's lots of history with tech development in this area. That didn't turn out right. And then, So this is just more kind of background. So you could see that it grew, and then you see like a lot of these, how crude they were with the initial resistors. So quantum computing has been developed since the 1980s. And then, we have a lot more resources, I would say, switching from classical to quantum as opposed to just starting with classical, because these things had to be imagined. We're talking about RAM and ROM and just basic principles of getting a personal computer worked out. So I equate the quantum revolution to what happened. And there's Steve right there, Steve and Steve. What's happened basically in the past. So you could see, just they were dealing with very limited means. And I know as far as like medical devices go too, is the resistors, or the quality was not there batch to batch. So a lot of times if you had certain LEDs, you'd have to have a certain algorithm that would cover an algorithm that would take into account due to the poor manufacturing processes. So we're just years and years, and I think that we've learned so much from these earlier days, and then being able to, carry it on to the quantum revolution. I personally think 2022 is going to be huge for quantum. So Amazon just announced a hybrid quantum computing platform, AWS bracket, and then the D-Wave stuff, they just announced there's, practical, computing with, quantum annealing. So I think for a number of startups, what we have today is fine. Like, yes, more hardware is awesome, but we've become so attuned to working around only like 100 qubits that when we get our 1,000 qubits likely next year, you'll see all different types of applications. So I think the best is yet to come, even next year. So, and then this switches into the headlines for today.
Kevin, I do need to hop out.
Okay, Rye. Yeah, thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So yeah, I'll ping you. I appreciate the presentation here.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice job.
Yeah, nice job, Ryan.
Thank you. If you want any slides, just message me.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks,
bye.
Ryan. So these go into some of the things that we were talking about before, Dave. So quantum processor inspired machine learning. And then you'll see these, this is a general thing. So you'll see these types of articles for, for the specific biomedical sciences. And then, you'll get a lot of cool articles as far as, what you could do with quantum here. So data preprocessing, dimensionality, and it just opens up. So you always look for the Q things. Oh, here we go. So classical machine learning and quantum algorithms. So there's just so many different things you can do. When you ever see one thing that says you can't, you always research and see what else is out there. Because because quantum is moving so fast, and these are some of the companies that we talked about. D-Wave, he talked about random number generator. I think random forest is a well-known algorithm. So you just have all these different tools. You have quantum software, quantum algorithms. You have, annealing. There's different types of data algorithm combinations referred to as CC, CQ, QC, and QQ. And there's not a lot of QQ because I think that's quantum data, quantum algorithm. But basically a very thorough individual put together a bunch of papers since I think the late 90s on what type of operations they were performing, if it was like CC, CQ, QC. So yeah, a lot of times the pictures says 1,000 words. And then when you look for these, this isn't like an actual study, but like they spent time on these graphics, and there's just so much work that's been done on illustrating the effects that quantum can have. And then as you can see with these, these are, not that, but, and then you could set Google searches, and this is for what quantum's going to do to health. And I was kind of interested by Ryan's presentation because it seems so far out as a compared the BCG stuff compared to what I read in the news every day. So improved disease screening. And again, like a lot of times you don't need the best quantum computer in the world. There's so many tools that work with each other. So this is saying, instead of using needles, that you could use certain nanoparticles. And then, so I think just the first one was actually quantum. Actually, yeah. So what Ryan was saying too is like, what's on my laptop right now? So more secure health data using this ID Quantique. But yeah, basically, medicine's been all over this. This is an interesting article here. So they've been taking their time, 112 hardware heroes. So we're on 71 through 84. So if my guess was the last 112 would be maybe New Year's Eve, I don't know. But these are people that, you could talk to that are experienced in quantum. We were talking about an individual, John Martinis. He was around since 1980s doing this stuff. And quantum has seen this, like in any technology, you're going to have hype and then it's going to come back down. There were people in 2015 thought in 2017 that they would be able to have their practical application. And it's just like how you define it. Like if you define, useful, practical, NFS says a useful quantum computer in 2023. And they've, helped been parts of like, $1 billion of government funding. So yeah, there's lots and lots of people that have worked, and I would say Ryan is right up there with it if he worked at Honeywell. So this article, it says IBM says quantum chip should be standard chips in 2 years. And that's like, I don't know if that means like, I don't think that means in your phone, but like maybe, because other experts like William Hurley, he's way aggressive with this stuff. And he thinks that 2023 is going to be a huge year. And this is saying IBM, you'd have to read the whole article, but basically to see that, they're aggressive with this. So yeah, a lot of these things, his BCG stuff, it's hard to decipher what exactly that means. This is a good summary. So they'll just mention quantum. So this is done by Caltech. So if you want to see the year in review, there's just so much every year that gets done. And then this is a heady, kind of like a research one.
One thing that came to mind while you were talking about some of the different things is, with like self-driving vehicles and stuff, you're probably not going to have the ability to have the processing in the car. You're just making the sensing in the car, and that's sending everything back to some facility, reading their, like the vehicle speed and the, moisture content in the air and all that stuff. Maybe sensing it 10 times a second, but sending everything back to, Ford or something where the quantum computer is, physically located in some server somewhere.
Yeah.
Or it is the server somewhere.
Yeah.
And all the processing is done there. And then, the signals are sent back, to the car maybe, or, there's got to be some sort of autonomousness to it, but even still, the bulk of the work is not done at where the user is, whether you're talking about cars or, AI or voice recognition or, writing, content creation.
Right.
We're seeing it in a split second, but it's not being done. It's being done in China somewhere or in Lithuania or something.
Yeah, there was an article, I think it was 2016, and it said that same thing. It predicted like this technology wasn't available yet, that it would be a cloud supported network. So some of it, like it's expected that most of the quantum stuff is going to be done in the cloud.